In the name of the one holy and undivided Trinity. Amen. So who knows what we familiarly call this Sunday in Anglican circles? Low Sunday. Low Sunday. You know, the derivation of that term isn't certain. It obviously, we witness lower attendance on the Sunday after Easter than the previous week. But the phrase might simply refer to the contrast between the high liturgy of Easter Day and not quite so much the Sunday following. In ancient times, the Sunday had its own name too. It was Dominica, Sunday, and Albis Deprendis, the removal of the white. It was the Sunday when those who had been baptized at the Easter Vigil then took off the garments of baptism. And the Orthodox make this connection between this day and baptism by calling it New Sunday, signifying the new life of Christ, in Christ, of those who were recently baptized. But whatever we call this Sunday, it is liturgically a direct continuation of what we gathered to celebrate last week. Last Sunday, of course, we heard the gospel story of the women coming to the tomb early on that first Easter Sunday morning and finding it empty. And today, in John's gospel, it picks up right after that. It's the evening of that very same day when the resurrected Christ appears to his disciples gathered together. And of course, we hear the wonderful story of so-called doubting Thomas. And I say so-called because, you know, I think in English, we're the ones that use that phrase. We do a disservice to Thomas and to our own understanding of him, because don't forget, Thomas is the first of the apostles who has the depth of faith to cry out, "My Lord and my God," in reference to Jesus. So it wasn't that Thomas didn't have faith. He had doubts, but he worked through them to come to a deep and profound faith. And so oftentimes the sermon on this Sunday is about the role of doubt in the life of faith, and it does have a place, a very important place. But I would like to assume that each of us, to a greater or lesser degree, relates to Thomas, in that we all have criteria for our belief. Thomas was clear on his criteria. He wanted to make sure that the Christ presence experienced by his colleagues was one and the same with his companion and friend, Jesus of Nazareth, whom he knew to have been crucified and died. Unless, he says, I see in his hand the mark of the nails, and place my finger in the mark of the nails, and place my hand in his side where the spear went in, I will not believe. Thomas knew what he needed to know in order to be assured of the resurrected Jesus' presence. But how about us? Those of us, as the gospel said, who have not seen and yet come to believe. How can we be assured of Christ's presence? And how and where do we even look for that presence? Well, I think the answer is right there in the gospel reading today, right there at the very beginning. You may want to pull it out. I've been saying we're going to do church like the Baptist today and go by phrase by phrase. We learn from all kinds of people. And it says that on that first day of the week, that Easter evening, Jesus came and stood among them. And I don't think that just sets the stage. That's an important criterion for recognizing the risen Christ among us. So often we look for God out there or up there, raise our eyes up. It's like the story of the first Russian cosmonaut. Remember when he came back down from space and reported, "I have proof now there is no God. I went to heaven and there was no one there." You don't remember that? That was reported. No, Christ stands in the midst of his followers. That's the first place we look. And that is why liturgists a number of decades ago became so adamant about pulling our altars out from the walls into the center, more at the center of the church. The freestanding altar was the earliest Christian churches. That's how they worshipped. But during the Middle Ages, they got pushed back against the wall, and the priests faced them, and it was all like we were looking to a shrine, to a God far off. And they said, no, 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 no. Christ comes and stands in the midst of his followers gathered around the Eucharistic table. And in fact, Christ's real presence we speak of is in that bread and wine blessed on the Eucharistic table around which we gather. Christ in our midst. If we want to see Christ in the world, we have got to begin seeing Christ in the midst of his followers. But then what does it say? He came and stood among them and said, "Peace be with you." Peace be with you. A blessing, a wish for peace. And this is another one of the criteria of Christ's presence, is the bringing of a wish for peace. Now, it's important that we don't get muddled in our thinking about that peace is somehow the opposite of strength and power. Peace can be very powerful and very strong, as witnessed in the life of him we call the Prince of Peace, or in others more closer to us in chronology, like Mahatma Gandhi or Martin Luther King. No, the power and strength of peace, though, is that which builds up and brings together and unifies and gives life. War, as we often think of it, as the opposite of peace. That's powerful and strong, but it is a power and strength that corrupts and destroys and fragments. Jesus came amidst his disciples and wished them peace. And again, in terms of our liturgy, we have a whole part of the service we call the exchange of peace. And, I hate to alert you, but it's really not halftime. Or something stretch, or whatever you want to call it. Nor is it a time to turn around and see what everybody's got on. And I said that at the prison last night. I realized they all have on the same thing. Or to catch up on how the bridge game went Saturday night. The interrelation, that's important, but this is a solemn moment in our liturgy when we take upon our own lips the very words that Christ wished for his followers. So that in that moment when we embrace one another and hopefully look in one another's eyes, we have the opportunity to embrace the risen Christ. Christ comes and stands in the midst of us and wishes us peace. Then what does it say? What did he do after that? Lost my place. Showed him his hands and his feet. There is the criterion of Thomas, to see the marks of suffering love. The great World War II Archbishop of Canterbury, William Temple, said, Christ's wounds are his credentials to a suffering world. Christ's wounds are his credentials. And it's so strange that oftentimes we actually use suffering and pain as an argument against God's presence. I can't tell you how many times I hear people make comments like, "Oh, I just find it hard to believe in God when there's so much innocent pain and suffering in the world." And that's an understandable thought, but it completely misses the good news of the cross. Completely. We, along with Thomas, realize that unless we see the marks of suffering love, we do not gaze upon the risen Lord. Reminded of another story, perhaps many of you have heard about Nazi concentration camp, where a young boy was hanged, and they forced the prisoners to walk by and look at his hanging corpse. And one of the prisoners grumbled under his breath, "Where is God now?" To which another one responded, "God is hanging there on the gallows. And no matter the context, or that it was said by one of our Jewish brothers, that is the heart of the Christian gospel. So rather than flounder in our faith when confronted with pain and suffering, we enter into that knowing that we are gazing at the risen Lord. So where is Christ in a drive-by shooting? He's lying on the ground with his body riddled with bullets. He's standing among those gathered and grieving, and he's saying, peace, peace be with you. The power to heal, and to come together and unite. And then finally, Jesus says, as the Father has sent me, so I send you. And this too is one of the criteria for our experience of the Easter Jesus. Jesus didn't come to pull us out of this wicked world. He didn't come to remove us to some pristine existence like you see in the rapture movies. He sent us into the world, into the pain and the suffering, to be his witnesses of the resurrection. And so, not only do we experience the resurrected Christ in the midst of his disciples gathered around the Eucharistic table, but we are sent out to be that Eucharistic presence in the midst of our brothers and sisters outside those doors. And not only do we experience the resurrected Lord when we receive blessings of peace, but we are called and sent to be peacemakers ourselves and to show Christ to the world. And not only do we recognize the risen Lord in the marks of his suffering love, but we are called to enter into that suffering love and to welcome it into our lives. And that's a hard thing to do. How do we do it? Well, the good old book says right there, I am becoming a Baptist. Good book says, he has given us the gift. He breathed on them the Holy Spirit. That's how we do it. The Spirit is that power of God, that being of God, which opens our eyes to recognize the risen Lord in our midst, on the altar, in the blessings of peace, and in the suffering of the world. And that gift of the Holy Spirit that he gave that first Easter is what empowers us to go and be that presence, to be his hands and feet in the world.